Welcome, everyone, to Scheller Lunchtime Live, a live stream series hosted by the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. My name is Lindsay Kane, and I'm the Associate Director of Client Relationships for non-degree executive education programs. On select Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you'll have the chance to hear from Scheller faculty, student, and alumni speakers as they discuss relevant topics for the tech-driven digital age. At Scheller, we're proud to offer undergraduate, MBA, and PhD programs, along with open enrollment and custom executive education programs. It's my pleasure to introduce Beril Toktay, Professor of Operations Management and Brady Family Chairholder. Her primary research areas are sustainable operations and supply chain management. Beril's research articles have appeared in Management Science, M&SOM, Operations Research, Production and Operations Management, and Industrial Ecology. She became a Distinguished Fellow of the MSOM Society in 2017. Beril has taught supply chain management courses at the PhD, MBA, and executive education levels, as well as operations management and operations research courses at the PhD level. At Georgia Tech, she serves as the Scheller College of Business Advanced Professor, a role that is focused on supporting the advancement of women and underrepresented minorities in academia. She is the founding faculty director of the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business and the co-architect and executive co-director of Georgia Tech's Serve, Learn, Sustain Quality Enhancement Plan. Today, Beril will discuss Drawdown Georgia, the first state-centered effort to crowd-solve for climate change. As always, feel free to ask questions in the comments section. Beril will address as many questions as possible at the end of her presentation. Over to you, Beril.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. And it's really a pleasure and honor to be here today, to be talking to all of you. As Lindsay said, my main research area and area of passion is sustainability. And since I joined Georgia Tech in 2005, that's an area that I invested in and collaborated on and got to know many amazing students and partners. So I'm very excited to share some of what's going on right now, and that's very exciting for all of us, which is Drawdown Georgia. So what I thought I would do, and I'm trying to navigate here to my screen now, I would give a little bit of a background about the center that I direct, the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business, and then give a thumbnail sketch of how we need to be thinking in the business world about climate change and what the opportunities in that space are. And based on that introduction, then talk about Drawdown Georgia. As Lindsay said, I welcome questions and comments, and I look forward to them either now or afterwards. So our center is proudly named after a Georgia Tech alumnus who eventually, later in his career, became an amazing spokesperson and an innovator in the sustainable business area, Ray C. Anderson. And the way that we articulate the mission and vision of our center is that we are here to educate the Ray Andersons of tomorrow, the leaders of tomorrow that are going to build sustainable businesses and communities. That is, all of you, really. So we do that by educating students. We have a number of different programs at all levels. We do that by engaging many organizations across the for-profit and nonprofit sector. We are very proud of investing in our amazing faculty's thought leadership. So this is just a subset of the faculty affiliated with our center. And this may be a little known fact to you, but Scheller College of Business now, as a result of the investments that were done at the university and in our center over the last 10, 15 years, has grown to be recognized as a sustainable business leader. So in 2020, we were ranked number 4 in the US in the Corporate Knights Better World MBA ranking. But not only that, but in the last 5 years, we were ranked consistently in the top 5. And we're very proud of what that says about our students, faculty, and partners. Another pride point is the inaugural 2020 Positive Impact Rating. Here, Scheller College of Business was identified as a transforming school. Only one of 3 in the US got that label. So again, very proud of everybody's contributions to that. So I'm going to ask another question, because this is perhaps like our college's sustainability ranking, a not so well-known fact yet. And I'd be curious if anyone guesses this. So what's common to these companies? What's common to these companies? Think about it a little bit and put your thoughts in the chat. And I wonder, Lindsay, if there is comments in the chat, you're able to share them with me right now. Or are people thinking, for the most part, what's common to these companies?
I think people are still thinking.
It's not so easy. I'll give it 10 more seconds and I'm going to do the big reveal. Okay, so the big reveal is that all of these companies have set ambitious climate action goals, corporate climate action goals. In fact, 32 of them have signed on to Science-Based Targets Initiative. And, this is a bit of an introduction perhaps to climate change and corporate action in this space. So let me explain what that is. This is an initiative that recognizes the fact that right now the scientific consensus is that we need to move our economy to a 2-degree or even 1.5-degree warming path, which requires going to carbon neutral as soon as possible. And so all of these companies who sign on to science-based targets are effectively saying, I'm in, I'm going to do whatever I can to drive down my carbon emissions in my operations, in my supply chain to 0, which is very, very ambitious. And so very proud to see a number of Georgia-based companies here. And I'm not going to be able to do justice to many of them. So apologies to companies that I'm leaving out of this. But I did want to point out Southern Company, because this sector does represent a big part of the carbon footprint in Georgia. So the fact that Southern Company has said, we've established an intermediate goal of a 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, and we want to be net zero by 2050 is very significant. Delta, likewise, last year committed $1 billion to become the first carbon neutral airline globally. So these are big publicly traded companies. We also have private companies. Southwire, for example, has set a goal to achieve 100% carbon zero energy by 2025. Very ambitious goal. And we even have companies that have not only been offsetting their carbon emissions fully to date, but also have said, how do we go negative? And are introducing products that cradle to gate, in fact, sequester more carbon than is used in the production process. So this is all very exciting, because what this means is that companies right here in Georgia are saying that they're going to be the innovators. They're going to be the ones that lead the change. So how do we think that's going to happen? And one of the important areas, of course, is consumer markets, right? So what do we as consumers want? NGOs have long known to be very active in this space and certainly push industry in the right direction in terms of climate commitments. But a very, very powerful force, of course, is the financial markets. So here I have an excerpt from Larry Fink. So Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, which is, one of probably the biggest holder of assets in the US. And in his 2021 letter, basically what he said was that they thought, because of the disruption coming from COVID, that financial markets might slow down a little bit their transition to sustainable investing, but that they were mistaken. And in fact, that transition that is happening in the financial markets has accelerated. That in 2020, we see, in fact, by November 2020, we see a 96% increase over the whole of 2019 that have been invested in sustainable assets. And he's, in the past, talked about how, climate risk is an investment risk. So it's very important for companies to be transparent about this and to have proper environmental and social governance to manage that risk. But now, just like many other people do, he's talking about how the climate transition presents a historic investment opportunity because there's so much innovation, so much new activity, so much growth to be had in this space. So financial markets, very important. So looking at all of this, companies are saying, okay, how are we going to take part in this? And how are we going to do this in a way that is smart, in a way that is strategic? And I thought I would introduce this 2x2, which has been published by two of my colleagues, that is talking about the continuum. I should say two of my colleagues, not at Georgia Tech, in the sustainable business community, because we are a very active and well-connected community. So how can we think about this? Well, companies can think about what they can do to adapt to climate change. So it's coming, it's going to happen. How do we react to it? How do we, manage our risk if we have exposure? But more importantly, how can we help through our actions mitigate, reduce, and even reverse climate change? Like going back to interfaces, Take Back Climate Pledge, right? That's about reversing climate pledge. So there's that continuum that we can think about. And in terms of the actions that we can take, well, we can take no regrets actions that even if climate change isn't as bad as is forecasted, we still win. There's still a positive return on investment. But we also, in addition to these more conservative, no regrets actions, make strategic bets. And that's where the growth and innovation is. So just to bring this to life a little bit, I thought I'd give a few examples from different sectors without, naming company names necessarily. Think about companies that manage large data centers. What are some no regrets actions that they're taking? Well, they're improving their energy efficiency. That reduces carbon emissions. It also reduces their costs. Win-win, no regret. There's always some, extreme weather event. So you want to invest in backup power sources and flood resilience. But these investments are going to be even more valuable if climate change is as disruptive as we're thinking. But even without that, they're valuable, right? And then there's the idea of strategic bets. These things are already happening, by the way. These companies are looking to building their new data centers in cooler climates so that they don't have to use as much energy to keep the servers in a cool environment, which is where most of the investors' needs of a data center comes from. And they're starting just like, investors, private investors invest in R&D and development. They are starting to earmark innovation funds to invest in R&D, like in renewable energy technologies, batteries, concrete that emits less energy when it's being produced, because you need concrete to build data centers, right? So all of that. Think about the aviation sector. What are no regrets actions there? Well, you can increase your fleet fuel efficiency. And at airports, we can invest in energy and flood resilience. But in terms of strategic bets, think about airlines. Investing in biofuels, right, is one strategic bet that they're all thinking of and, in fact, already investing in. Or in the airport sector, when you're building, don't build it at zero ground level. Build a little bit far from the sea, right? So those are strategic, future-looking actions. I put in agriculture because this is so important to our state, right? So there's a lot of actions that we can totally fill this slide with, but I just pulled a few. No regrets actions, gleaning programs that glean crops from fields, reduce food waste, and feed people who are food insecure. We want to do more of that anyway, right? Installing freeze protection systems. This is something that is useful regardless, but even more useful if we have extreme weather temperatures. And then looking to the future, investing in regenerative agriculture. That is truly the future when we're thinking about agriculture. And it's already starting to happen, like White Oaks Farms in Georgia is one of the exemplars in that space. So when we look at these, the no regrets actions and strategic bets, it's in the strategic bets that we see innovation. Whether we're talking about technology innovation or whether we're talking about business model innovation, new ways of doing business that are less energy intensive but still create value for customers. And once those innovations become more standard, less costly, then they diffuse, and then they become no regrets actions. Solar, for example, used to be expensive 10, 15 years ago, more expensive than standard grid energy. Now it's at parity or close, or even better in some places, right? So what we want to see is strategic bets that drive innovation and then go down market to those companies that are not the innovators, but more the followers. But all of that entire ecosystem is hugely important. So I talked about companies taking this strategic approach. We can also ask the question, what is the state of Georgia doing, right? What is the state of Georgia's strategic action portfolio? What are its no regrets actions? What are its strategic bets? What is it that we want to grow here? And every organization, including Georgia Tech, right, needs to be asking these questions. Whenever you start asking these questions, a lot of other questions pop up, right? So what are my options? How much potential is there for carbon reduction? Is it affordable? Is the technology mature? Is it going to be valued by consumers? Can I deploy them in a way that improves equity and equitable outcomes in the state? Can I deploy them in a way that doesn't hurt the environment in other ways that were unanticipated and unintended, right? So a lot of questions pop up, and many good people, more than I can count, are working on this. I'd like to give a shout out to the Georgia Climate Project that's been talking about, what are the scientific questions that we need to answer here in the state of Georgia, and talking about adaptation to climate change and storytelling. That's been working for a while now. But what I want to focus now is this Drawdown Georgia initiative that started maybe 2 years ago now, and that was nucleated by the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. And the question they asked is, we know, and there's a international Project Drawdown, that there are many technical solutions that we can use and non-technical solutions that we can use to reduce our carbon emissions. But if we want to do this in Georgia, so if we want to reduce Georgia's carbon footprint while accelerating its economic growth and achieving equitable outcomes, how do we do that? Where do we start? What are those solutions that hold the most promise, right? And so the Ray C. Anderson Foundation funded a project that was a multi-university project. Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Emory University, and Georgia State, actually we had also collaborators from Georgia State, worked at this for about 1.5 years. And I'm going to try to start this video so you can hear this concept very briefly from the executive director of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation.
So these past 18 months, these amazing researchers from Georgia Tech, the University of Georgia, Emory University, and Georgia State have gone through every last bit of data they could get their hands on to show which climate solutions have the greatest carbon reduction potential in our state, what the financial considerations are for scaling them. And critically, they've thought through the issues beyond carbon, wanting to know what scaling climate solutions means for our communities and advancing equity, what it means for economic development, inclusive economic development, what it means for human health, and what it means for our natural environment in general.
So, like John Lanier said, the team, a large team of researchers worked on this. And basically, the conclusion of this study was that there are 20 solutions that are the most promising, that we deem the most promising for Georgia. And we can categorize them in these 5 sectors: electricity, transportation, food and agriculture, building and materials, and land sinks. So for example, in electricity, those that you may recognize more easily are rooftop solar and large-scale solar, but there's others as well. In transportation, improving the energy efficiency of cars and trucks, electrification of vehicles, investing in mass transit and alternative mobility. In food and agriculture, reducing food waste, conservation agriculture, regenerative agriculture, composting, and people adopting a plant-rich diet. In building and materials, refrigerant management, retrofitting, and recycling. And also looking at our very valuable land sinks, where we already see that Georgia has a lot of forest land, and so it's able to act as a big sink of carbon. We need to think about the health of those forests and improving the forest land as well. So, you know, this is a list, but really what I'm inviting you to do here, looking at this list, is imagine a future state of Georgia, right? Imagine a future state of Georgia where rooftop solar, every south-facing roof has a solar panel. We have large-scale utility, large-scale solar power. We have invested in the most effective landfill methane projects, that we have an incredible level of electrification, and that in all of these areas, we're the leader. But more importantly than that, I want you to imagine what it means to be a leader. It means that we are investing in technologies here in Georgia, not importing them from other places. It means that if we do regenerative agriculture at scale, and we do the coastal wetland temperate forest protection and management at the best standards, maybe we become the ecotourism destination of the country, right? Maybe we go so far in the buildings and materials space that the net negative, in fact, energy and water Candida building at Georgia Tech becomes the standard for all new construction. And the innovation that is needed, both technological and building practice innovation that is needed to make that happen, draws investment here and diffuses to the rest of the US. So think of all of the technological investments that can happen, all of the business model innovations that can happen here in the state to put us ahead of the curve in terms of accelerating our economy in a way that is just, equitable, sustainable, and achieves shared prosperity. That's really what we want to think about. This is not about conserving. This is about growing smart. This is about attracting talent to Georgia. This is about exporting technologies to Georgia. This is about when Georgia Tech has a battery unicorn, which we do now. It is not in Silicon Valley, but it is right here, right? So there's so much potential here that we ought to be thinking about when we think about Drawdown Georgia. And I want to leave you with that vision. So how do we make that happen? Well, the broad Georgia Drawdown initiative is really a movement, and it engages many people. There are many irons in the fire. I want to highlight here just one thing that our center, the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business, is in the process of nucleating and very excited about it, to create a collective impact initiative that is industry-led, voluntary, but of course open to all organizations, where the commitment of any organization, company and organization that joins the compact is to say, we support the state of Georgia achieving net zero emissions by taking action ourselves, by facilitating collective action, by eliminating barriers that we see, in a way that grows Georgia's economy and achieves just and sustainable outcomes. So we're in the process now of designing and inviting companies to join this compact. There's already a number of well-known companies that have said yes verbally, but I'm not yet at the liberty of revealing that. But any company that you represent, I invite you to contact us and to ask, what does it mean to join the Georgia Drawdown Compact? How can my company participate? And fundamentally, we're saying to join means committing to this vision, determining how you're going to participate, and becoming part of the either in-kind or financial resource base to manage and grow this coalition in a way that establishes the state of Georgia as the leader in the new economic transition that is driven by climate considerations. So I am finishing with barely 2 minutes. I apologize for that. But I invite you to go to these sites. So drawdowngeorgia.org is maintained by the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. The CEPAL lab, this is Dr. Marilyn Brown's lab. She was the lead PI in the phase 1 of this Drawdown Georgia work that identified the 20 solutions. So more of the technical work is there. And also visit our center. All of these websites, you can join LinkedIn, you can follow us so that you hear about how you can participate even at an individual level with making this transition happen in Georgia. So we invite you to be the change. And if you want to hear more about how to do this, please contact us at the center or contact me directly. I would love to hear from you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Beril. We do have a few questions, and I also want to acknowledge that we did have some correct answers to your question at the start of the session. We were just on a little bit of a delay, so congratulations to those people who got the answer correct. But do you anticipate any companies, airlines especially, taking the Patagonia approach of emphasizing quality over quantity in an attempt to decrease their impact on the planet by altering consumer behavior?
I'm trying to think of the connection between Patagonia and Delta, but consumer behavior is very important. One of the ways that airlines have engaged consumers is thinking about carbon offsets. So if you have to fly, an airline isn't necessarily going to tell you don't fly, right? That's something that we have to think about. And if we fly less, then airlines will need to find a way to adapt to that. But there will always be airline emissions. And one way that consumers can participate and airlines can facilitate that, and in fact are facilitating that, is consumers joining and contributing to carbon offset programs.
Thank you. And are other states in the U.S. initiating similar programs similar to Drawdown Georgia?
That's a very good question. So there are a number of coalitions. The Science-Based Initiatives is one. It's a national one. At the state level, typically we see kind of top-down state government-driven change or city-by-city choices. This, we believe, is the first bottom-up collective action type of initiative in the US that is at the state level. And we've already gotten queries from other states to see how they could apply our approach and nucleate this kind of program. So we're very proud to be the first there.
That's really great. Thank you so much again for your time today, Beril. Our next Scheller Lunchtime Live session is Friday, May 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern. The topic is Applying Principles of Athletic Peak Performance to the Workplace, featuring Scheller MBA alumna Rebecca Viprakis. Rebecca will share how the philosophy of peak performance can help you survive and thrive through the unknowns, isolation, and anxiety of the pandemic and beyond. You can register for this event and learn more about future Scheller Lunchtime Live sessions by following the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business on LinkedIn. A recording of this session and future sessions will be available on our LinkedIn and YouTube pages as well. Thank you all for joining.